My name is Rebecca Winters, 42, married to Alex for 16 years. We have twin daughters, Lily and Emma, who just turned 14. Our life was predictable, comfortable, and entirely our own until 18 months ago, when Alex's older brother, Thomas, was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The diagnosis was devastating. Thomas, always the picture of health at 48, had less than a year to live according to his doctors. He was also a single father to his 16-year-old son, Nathan, after his wife left them both 6 years earlier for a new life in Australia. We need to be there for them, Alex insisted one night after a particularly difficult hospital visit. Thomas is worried about Nathan more than anything else. I agreed without hesitation. Family supports family in times of crisis. That was how both Alex and I were raised. What I didn't anticipate was Alex's next suggestion. I think they should move in with us until Thomas gets better. The unspoken reality hung between us. Thomas wasn't going to get better. We both knew it, but neither could bear to acknowledge it aloud. Of course, I said, pushing aside practical concerns about space, privacy, and the disruption to our family routine. We'll make it work. Within 2 weeks, Thomas and Nathan had moved into our 4-bedroom suburban home. The girls doubled up in one bedroom to give Nathan his own space, while we converted our home office into a bedroom for Thomas that could accommodate the growing collection of medical equipment that arrived with alarming frequency. The first few months were a difficult but manageable adjustment. Our previously quiet home became a hub of activity, nurses coming and going, friends dropping off meals, and our daily schedule revolving around Thomas's medication times and doctor appointments. Nathan, withdrawn and angry about his father's illness, spent most of his time in his room playing video games or out with friends until all hours. He's processing, Alex would say whenever I expressed concern about Nathan's behavior. Everyone grieves differently. I understood this theoretically, but practically, Nathan's presence was creating tension. The girls complained about his loud music late at night, his friends eating food they'd saved for themselves, and his general dismissal of house rules. Several times I found empty beer cans hidden in the recycling bin. But when I mentioned this to Alex, he just sighed. His father is dying, Rebecca. Can we cut him some slack? Thomas's condition deteriorated more rapidly than expected. By the 5-month mark, he rarely left his bed and required round-the-clock care that fell primarily to me, as Alex needed to work extra hours to cover the mounting medical expenses not covered by insurance. One Tuesday afternoon, I was changing Thomas's sheets while he sat exhausted in his wheelchair, a task that had become increasingly difficult as his strength waned. "You're an angel, Rebecca," he said, his voice thin but sincere. "I don't know what Nathan and I would have done without you and Alex." I smiled, though my back ached from the physical demands of caregiving. That's what family does. "Nathan's lucky to have you," he continued, his eyes suddenly earnest. "After I'm gone, I mean." The statement caught me off guard. Though we all knew the inevitable outcome, Thomas rarely spoke so directly about his death. "Thomas," I began, but he shook his head. "We need to talk about it. About Nathan. He'll need guidance, structure. Alex told me you two discussed becoming his guardians." I paused in my sheet tucking, while Alex and I had briefly discussed the possibility of Nathan staying with us after Thomas passed. We hadn't made any firm decisions, much less discussed legal guardianship. "We want to support Nathan however we can," I said carefully. Thomas nodded, visibly relieved. "That means everything to me. Nathan respects you, even if he doesn't show it." If Nathan respected me, he had a peculiar way of demonstrating it. Just the previous night, he'd missed his midnight curfew by 3 hours and responded to my concern with an eye roll, "And you're not my mom, so stop trying to be." Nevertheless, I couldn't bring myself to burden Thomas with these concerns. His focus needed to be on his limited time with his son, not worrying about future living arrangements. As Thomas's health declined further, Nathan's behavior escalated proportionally. He began skipping school, coming home with alcohol on his breath, and treating our home like a hotel, appearing only to sleep or demand money. My attempts to establish boundaries were met with hostility or simply ignored. One evening, after finding cigarette burns on our back porch furniture, I finally confronted Alex. "This isn't working," I said as we got ready for bed, keeping my voice low to avoid being overheard. "Nathan needs more help than we can provide. He's self-destructing, and our girls are watching it happen in their own home. Alex rubbed his face tiredly. What do you expect me to do? Kick out my dying brother and his grieving son? Of course not, I replied, stung by the implication. But we need to get Nathan some professional help. Therapy at minimum. And we need to enforce actual consequences when he breaks the rules. We're not helping him by letting him spiral like this. He's going to lose his father, Rebecca, Alex snapped. What consequences could possibly matter compared to that? Our conversation was interrupted by a loud crash from downstairs, followed by the unmistakable sound of breaking glass. We rushed down to find Nathan and 3 friends in our living room. An expensive floor lamp shattered across the hardwood, the distinct smell of marijuana hanging in the air. What is going on here? Alex demanded, his patience finally fracturing. Nathan, clearly intoxicated, just laughed. Chill, Uncle Alex. We're just hanging out. In our home, at midnight, with alcohol and drugs, when you know your father needs rest? I interjected, struggling to control my anger. One of Nathan's friends smirked. Your stepmom's uptight, man. She's not my stepmom, Nathan retorted. She's nobody to me. The words stung more than I expected. After months of caring for his father, rearranging our lives, and trying to provide stability for Nathan, to be dismissed as nobody felt like a slap. Alex stepped forward. That's enough. Your friends need to leave now. We'll discuss this in the morning when you're sober. After Nathan's friends departed and he stumbled upstairs, Alex and I were left surveying the damage to our living room in uncomfortable silence. This can't continue, I said finally. The girls are afraid to come downstairs when Nathan has friends over. I found Lily crying yesterday because someone took her art project from the refrigerator and used it as a coaster. Alex nodded slowly, the reality of our situation finally seeming to register. I'll talk to him tomorrow. Really talk to him. And if that doesn't work? One step at a time, Alex replied, but I could see resolution in his eyes that hadn't been there before. The conversation with Nathan the next day did not go well. He stormed out of the house, didn't return for 2 days, and when he finally did, he refused to speak to either of us. What changed the equation wasn't our intervention, but Thomas's. Though increasingly weak, he somehow found the strength to confront the situation after overhearing Nathan's behavior while pretending to sleep. Nathan, he called one evening, his voice surprisingly commanding despite its weakness. We need to talk, alone. I left them to their conversation, taking the girls out for ice cream to ensure privacy. When we returned nearly 2 hours later, the atmosphere in the house had shifted perceptibly. Nathan approached me as I put away leftovers in the kitchen. I need to say something, he began awkwardly, staring at the floor. Dad told me, he told me everything you've been doing. For him, for me, he swallowed hard. I've been a jerk. It wasn't quite an apology, but from Nathan, it was unprecedented. We're all under a lot of stress, I offered. He shook his head. No, it's more than that. I didn't want to deal with what's happening to Dad. So I've been trying to feel nothing instead. His voice cracked slightly. Dad says that's not fair to you guys. Or to him. That conversation marked a turning point. Nathan didn't transform overnight into a model teenager, but small changes accumulated. He began keeping his curfew, helping with household chores, and even spending time with his father without being prompted. He started seeing the therapist we'd suggested months earlier, and while he still had difficult days, the deliberate destructiveness ceased. Thomas passed away peacefully 6 weeks later with Alex, Nathan, and me at his bedside. The girls waited respectfully in the living room, having said their goodbyes earlier that day. In his final lucid moments, Thomas squeezed my hand and whispered, "Take care of my boy." I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "We will. I promise." The months following Thomas's death were a delicate balancing act of grief, adjustment, and establishing a new normal. The legal guardianship was finalized with surprising ease, as Thomas had prepared all the necessary documentation before his condition deteriorated. Nathan's grief manifested in quieter ways than his earlier rebellion. He became withdrawn, spending hours organizing and reorganizing his father's belongings, reluctant to part with even the most mundane items. The therapist assured us this was normal, part of the process. One evening about 4 months after Thomas's passing, I found Nathan sitting at our kitchen table, surrounded by photo albums. "Hey," I said softly, not wanting to intrude. Finding some good memories. He nodded, then hesitantly pushed an album toward me. Did I ever show you pictures from our trip to Yellowstone? Before Mom left. I shook my head and sat down beside him, recognizing the invitation for what it was, a willingness to share part of his past, to connect. We spent the next hour looking through photographs, Nathan gradually opening up about memories of both his parents, his voice occasionally breaking but continuing nonetheless. As we reached the end of the album, he closed it carefully and looked up at me. You know, he said, his attempt at casualness betrayed by the emotion in his voice. Dad told me once that families aren't just about blood. They're about who stays when things get hard. I felt tears welling up but managed a smile. Your dad was a wise man. Yeah, Nathan agreed. And he was right about you and Uncle Alex. He paused, clearly struggling with what to say next. I want you to know that I'm trying. To be part of this family, I mean. You already are part of this family, I assured him. You have been from day one. The transition hasn't been perfect. Nathan still has days when grief overwhelms him, when he retreats into silence or lashes out unexpectedly. The girls sometimes resent the attention he requires or the changes to our family dynamic. Alex and I occasionally disagree about parenting approaches or boundaries. But there are also unexpected moments of joy. Nathan teaching the girls to skateboard, family game nights that dissolve into laughter, conversations around the dinner table that stretch late into the evening. 6 months ago, Nathan's biological mother reached out, suddenly interested in reconnecting with the son she'd abandoned. The request threw our carefully reconstructed family balance into temporary chaos. After much discussion, including several sessions with Nathan's therapist, we supported his decision to establish limited contact via video calls while remaining in our home. You're my family now, he told us after the third awkward call with his mother. I want to know her, but this is home. Last week, as we prepared for the girls' 15th birthday celebration, I found myself staring at our living room wall where photos of our expanded family now hung alongside the originals. In one recent edition, Nathan stood between Lily and Emma at their school's science fair, all three grinning proudly in front of their joint project. Alex came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. What are you thinking about? I leaned back against him, considering the question. About borrowed time, I answered finally. How Tom's thought he was borrowing our time, our home, our stability. But really, we were borrowing Nathan from him, preparing to continue what Thomas started. Alex nodded against my shoulder. Do you ever regret it? Taking all this on. The question gave me pause, not because I was uncertain of the answer, but because the answer itself surprised me. Despite the challenges, the heartbreak, the complete upheaval of our carefully planned life, I couldn't honestly say I regretted our decision. No, I replied. It's not the family we planned for, but it's the family we have. And somehow, it works. Later that evening, as we sang Happy Birthday to the girls, I caught Nathan's eye across the table. He gave me a small, genuine smile that conveyed more than words could express. In that moment, I understood what Thomas had known all along. Family isn't measured in blood relations or legal documents, but in the willingness to show up for each other, to work through the hard parts, to build something lasting from the borrowed time we're all given. The path forward won't always be smooth. Nathan starts college next year. The girls are entering their challenging teenage years, and we're all still learning how to navigate this blended family we've created. But with each passing day, the word borrowed feels less and less appropriate. This isn't borrowed time anymore. It's simply our time, our family, our life. Complicated, messy, and infinitely precious.